good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are looking at this video from. My name is Dr. David Frederick Amakobe. I am a consultant in organizational behavior, organizational structure, entrepreneurship, and human capital. Today I'm coming to you live because some of my subscribers have asked that we discuss a subject which is of concern to a lot of people. It's dealing with failure. So basically, we have been running a survey on the social media about how people deal with failure, and we found that there was a lot of interest, and people said they wanted to talk about it. So that's why I'm here today to discuss it and see what people think, because most of the people are saying, some people are saying most of the people they know deal with failure by unfairly blaming other people. Others are saying the people deal with failure by blaming themselves. And others are saying people deal with failure by denying failure and not accepting that there is failure at all, or if there is any, they have no part in it. And last group is saying that people deal with failure by learning from it, accepting that they have failed, learning from it, and moving ahead so that they can work until they are able to succeed. So I'd like to hear from you and see what do you think. How do you think how people deal with failure, or in your view, how they should deal with it, and if they deal with it the wrong way, how we should be able to fix that. So I will be checking. People think, because most of the people are saying, some people are saying, yeah. So we open the chat. We can talk about it and see what do you think, because basically, if you go to succeed in something, you go to try it several times. And if you try something several times, it means you have to fail several times. And if you have an opinion that you will be successful first time you do something, you are bound to give up. And when you give up is when you are completely failed. So I'd like to know from you how people should be socialized to understand frustration and failure. Since if we talk about success, success is the flip side of failure, and success is premium because it doesn't occur as frequently as failure. Although we are conditioned and socialized not to talk about failure per se, or to not recognize that it does exist, because we just told try and try again, but nobody mentions that when you try and try again, it means that you will fail and fail again before you succeed. So the objective of this session today and every Friday is to discuss topics in organizations that most of the people seem to think are taboo to discuss. Since I specialize in the impact individuals, groups, structures, and processes have on behavior within organizations, and the process of failure before you succeed has a major impact on behavior within organizations. So I think that socializing ourselves to know that in whatever we do, we will not be successful on first try. However good we may be, however well prepared we may be, the failure may come because we were not well prepared, or we didn't know how to handle it initially. That's preventable failure. But failure may also come just because there are things that were out of our control at that particular time. So, however it comes, it will come. And most successful people will tell you they never were successful on first try. And if they were never successful on first try, if we don't condition and socialize ourselves and our kids, then they're growing up, that they will face frustration and failure in their chosen fields, in their chosen endeavors. But it doesn't mean they are bad, doesn't mean it's hard. It just means that they will have to perfect their skill, their abilities, their competencies, and also the ability to control, not even control, to work within the ecosystem that they will be working in, so that they can be able to succeed. So that's why we're here, to be able to listen to you and see what you think. Because it's one thing to encourage people to get into business, but it's another one to tell them the truth, that when they finally open their business, it will not be easy. In the long run, they will succeed, but in the short run, they'll meet frustrations and failures that they need to handle. And how they handle them will determine their final result. So if you deal with frustration by blaming other people, then you may not have the capacity to go over it until you become successful. Or if you deny that it doesn't exist, then you are flying blind. Or if you get into a pity party, blaming yourself for everything and everything on earth, then you can't go over it. But you need to narrow it down, fix it, know what it is, learn from it, and move ahead. But as most of the responses we have got shows, we frame the question in the sense saying that what do the majority of the people you know, how do the majority of the people you know handle failure or frustration? And most people think that most people they know handle failure and success by unfairly blaming other people. That's something that we need to bring down. We need to be able to coach our people to accept that they have failed, or they have got short of their expectations, and that they should know where they went off the route. But if they cannot take, I don't like the word negative feedback, because as soon as you say negative feedback, somebody is antennas up and they are thinking of a way to defend themselves. I think feedback is feedback, whether you become successful or you got to the given objective in a timely manner or you miss the mark. You should get feedback so that you can do a course correction. And doing a course correction does not mean that you are not good at what you do. It just means that you didn't have all the things lined up at that particular time. So, in as much as it's human to think that everything you try must succeed immediately and you get instant gratification, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. You will not get instant gratification, and even if you're going to succeed, it's going to take time. Everything has a gestation period, and that gestation period, that waiting time will be frustrating. How you handle it, how you handle the gestation period from the time you invest your time, your talent, and your ideas to the time they mature and become something that can be celebrated, it takes time. And your behavior in the interval will determine whether you will be there celebrating with everybody else or you will be seen as having failed. So I think besides ourselves having to handle this, society also has to be able to socialize people to accept that it takes 10,000 hours practicing a craft or a competency to be good at it. And since every endeavor we work on will involve more than one craft, that means that we will have to use some competencies that we are not very good at. And those will be our vulnerabilities if we are not able to bring in other people to help us in those fields. So bringing in other people in your endeavor means you have to have other resources to be able to expend towards that endeavor. If you're going to do it by yourself, then you will need to factor in the fact that all the skills, all the competencies you need in that endeavor, you either have to develop them, and if you have to develop them, in the developing them, you will make some errors. And it will be frustrating even if you will be able to develop them. Just the idea of developing peripheral skills or competencies will frustrate you. And that frustration is what we're calling failure. Is small failures, things that will frustrate you on your way to success. But how you deal with them, how you deal with small frustrations is very important. Frustrations will determine how you end up finally. So I'll wait a little bit here, wait to see who comes on board so that we can be able to talk about this. So how we deal with the small and big frustrations on our way, on our route in life, determines where we'll end up. It's something that when you consider it and you become disinterested, it looks reasonable, but when you are going through it, it doesn't look nice. If you look at examples of people who are succeeded and are visible, you'll find that they worked very hard in the shadows. They did not all of a sudden become famous or be successful in whatever they're doing. They worked hard without people cheering them on, just grinding up, and from one frustration to another, from one failure to another. But in the end, they ended up doing something successful, which was not noticed. So, how we deal with failure determines whether we are finally successful or we are not. Because if we get frustrated to the extent of denying it, to the extent of blaming other people, or to the extent of blaming ourselves, until we do not have the energy or the capacity to continue, we then finally fail. But if we look at the frustrations and failures that we go through in the process of doing whatever endeavor or whatever business we are doing, working at, then we'll consider them as challenges that we have to overcome and get satisfaction from the fact that we overcome them, and at the end we become successful. So, the emphasis on success is like emphasizing on the celebration of it, recognizing that there will be challenges in whatever you plan to do, in whatever you do, and planning ahead to know that the people you meet are not sitting there waiting for you so that they can trip you. So don't blame them. If somebody tells you no, it doesn't mean that they stood there just waiting for you to come and be told no. They may have their reasons. They may have their understanding of the situation. But if you let that stop you, then they've stopped you. If you try something once and it doesn't work, and then you go and lock yourself in a bedroom and cry, then you're fair. But if you brush it off and keep going, then you are on your route to success. And like I said before, if you deny that the failure isn't there, or that you didn't play any part in it, then you are flying an airplane blind. You are not recognizing reality. And if you don't recognize reality, there's no way you can be able to achieve your objective. Because if something went away, it did, okay, find out why. See whether you planned right, see whether you had all the resources in place, see whether you had the timing right, see whether you talk to the right people, see whether you wanted to drive through the wall instead of going around it. Instead of blaming somebody that they could have let you go through that door, maybe you should have gone through the back door. Things that you should have done better. That's why learning from every challenge, doing a postmortem of everything is important for the success. And most people, when they start something like a business, like they start a business, they start because they like it. They don't sit down and establish a mission statement, objectives. They just think they want to do it. But you know, when you want to do something, you may be interested in it, but a lot more people are involved, and those people will need to be paid. So costs are real, revenues are. So, and even if you like playing football and you think you want to play football, that's all right. But every day you incur costs. Just living, waking up yourself is costly. You need breakfast, you need clothes, you need a place to sleep, and something like that. So if football or soccer is your thing, then you need to identify who is paying for it. Who are you creating value for? And how are you going to capture that value? That is normally sometimes the basic thing that makes most businesses fail. Because people know what they want to do, why they want to do something. They may not know how to do it, but they know why they want to do it. But they don't know for who they are going to do it. And if they know for who they are going to do it, they don't take time to find out whether the person who they are going to do that for has the ability to pay for the thing so that they themselves can be paid and pay their bills. In as much as we would like to do things for free for people to feel good, but we must find somebody to pay for it, because somebody somewhere has to pay for it. Even if you're doing a non-profit, you have to be able to identify somebody with the resources that will be able to foot the bills of doing that job. Non-profit doesn't mean no bills. It means bills, means expenses. So being able to define for who we are creating value and specifically specify how we are going to capture that value and what portion of it is going to us. That's just another frustration, because you will see you created value and you will think the other people should be able to read your mind and know that you also need your expenses paid. So those are the little frustrations that come that need to be taken care of before we can say that we are going into business, or we are entrepreneurs and we want to solve a problem for society. Even if you are solving a problem for society, you need to be able to define who really owns that problem. Because the person who owns it has to put some resources on it. Otherwise, nothing can be done without resources. Even your time and space, your time and space need to be paid for. And if you are doing something valuable to society, somebody somewhere should be able to pay for that. So your ability to define for who you are creating value and how that value is going to be captured and how you are going to be able to participate in the distribution of that value is important. That will create a major failure. But the other frustrations you will have is if you start building a plane as you fly it, that means you start running the business and in the process start defining who is going to pay for this, how you're going to capture the value, and how the value is going to be distributed. If you already started and there are all these people hanging around you who have no place of value, who you can tell to sit down and define their role in the creation of value and they can't. If those are the people you have around you and you already started flying the plane, your frustrations will not come from not being able to define the value or who has the value or how the value is going to be spent trying to define who you are, who you work for, what percentage of value that is due to you and due to the other people, how are the other people, why are the other people have to be compensated for not producing value, and even do they recognize what value you bring? Most people, let me say, some people haven't internalized the fact that knowledge is expensive. Okay, fine. They take children to school and they pay school fees very expensively, but I think they concentrate on the end result, on the certificate, and not the knowledge that is being gathered. So when you tell them to pay for knowledge, they cannot internalize, they cannot put value on the knowledge. So you may sit with people when you are doing an endeavor or an enterprise, and they are used to valuing physical things. They want to see whether you brought 20 computers or cameras, something physical. That's what they think is real, is an asset, or land, or house, or something. But the soft stuff, the processes that runs the business, frustrations will come if you are dealing with people who haven't gotten to the time of understanding that. And therefore, if you started flying the plane before building it, and you are in the air building it, and people don't understand that there are a lot of bolts there, but knowing which bolts to tighten and which one to loosen, just knowing which one to do is more expensive than just turning the bolt. It will be frustrating, and you may be tempted to blame them when you could have actually avoided this by making sure that everybody understands, or picking your team well, being a good judge of character. Being a good judge of character and judge of expertise or people is a skill and a competency too, which you need to apply. So if you are in an association or a group or an entity, and the partners or the shareholders don't seem to understand that knowledge is expensive, then maybe you pick the wrong thing. So instead of blaming them, learn from it and move on. And the only expensive thing we have in life is time. Everything else we got. If we got all the time in the world, we can do everything, but we don't have. So make sure you don't eat your time on challenges that you would learn from and move on. So when we began, I said I'm running a survey, and most people are telling me that they think that most of the people they know blame others when they fail, unfairly. Or they just deny that failure is there. They just think they succeeded. Or they blame themselves. Very few people will look back according to the surveys, the numbers I'm saying, and think, hey, okay, this happened, we didn't achieve our objectives, and this is the reasons, so let's make sure that we do it next time, we do it better. We need to be able to know when to cut our losses and run, because the only limited resource in human beings are against is time. Because we are all, as soon as we are born, we are racing towards the time we live. But other than that, if we were to stay here forever, we'll be able to do everything that we need to do and over again. So time is of essence. I think that everything else, if you manage your time well and you know when to cut your losses and move on, you will be able to meet all the challenges and all the frustrations. And if you put your focus on the end result, not on the challenges, the frustrations that come in between. I see. Let's wait a few minutes, see who's coming on. And that we will be doing this every Friday from 12. Every Friday from 12 to 1 my time, New York time. So that should be good time around the world, particularly in the areas that my subscribers are, so that we can be able to talk about issues that will arise in organizations run by entrepreneurs, and we see how we can be able to talk about the things that most people know, realize, talk about it, but they talk in hushed terms. You know, it's like failure is taken like a four-letter word. Nobody wants to talk about. No one wants to mention it. But just because it's more frequent than success, it's more frequent than success. Okay? You will succeed. You will succeed in one place. You get frustrated in another. So those little frustrations turn up, and they affect the behavior within organizations. And if people are conditioned to hide them, not talk about it, then we have a situation whereby when something happened and somebody doesn't achieve their objective, they seem to want to fudge their numbers. They need to tell a yarn that's not right. they just become unethical. But if we normalize somebody coming and say, okay, we did that one, but we went off the rail here, went off the rail here, we're going to fix it next time. I think that's what I'm aiming at. I'm aiming at all organizations socializing the individuals, their groups, and putting processes in place where when a project succeeds, is there, they see why it succeeded and how it worked out, and what little frustrations or challenges were there. And if a project fails, same thing. Sit down, go through the numbers, the processes, see where it went wrong. Or gone wrong where it failed to meet the objective. Okay? Where there was a deviation, how did that deviation occur? Why did that variance occur? Okay? That way, we have a history of the processes, whether it was the process issue or whether it was a detailing, an execution issue. We need to know it. But if the culture is such that failure is frowned upon and people have to hide when things go wrong, I think the behavior in such an organization will end up in disaster. So the biggest issue is the normalization of reporting and doing an after action report for everything, whether it's successful or failed, rather whether it met the objective or it didn't. Okay, because it may not meet the objective in 1 month, but after 6 months it will meet the objective. Or something else may meet the objective in 1 month and then miss the objective in 12 months. So just the ability to steer so that we remain on course is important, but you cannot remain on course if you are not reporting bad news. If the culture in the organization is such that bad news is not reported, or the boss or the supervisor does not listen to bad news, or does not take bad news well, or they blame the person who reporting for the failure, or they deny, they decide that thing didn't work, it's not what is being told, that is a problem. So as we go through these charts every Friday, I'll ask that you also raise some topics that seem like taboo in your organizations, so that when we talk about them and no one is talking about them, we are not preaching normalizing mediocre performance, but we are saying if everything was done right, but then somebody took an exit earlier or later on the highway, okay, they didn't arrive in time. They drove well, they had taken care of the car, gassed it, drove it very perfectly, but at one point when the GPS told them to turn right, they turned left. So we need to know that. And if they cannot be able to come and say, hey, sorry, I missed a turn. Because if you miss a turn on a highway and you refuse to accept that you missed a turn, you can't course correct. So that is that's what I'm looking to be able to help out in organizations on subjects that are taboo, on subjects that people shy away from handling. Because anytime somebody doesn't want to talk about something, That's the problem. That's the problem right there. That's the problem right there. So if you are in an organization and people never talk about, they talk about turnover generally in the whole company of all the people, 10%, but they don't say amongst the minorities, turnover is 100%. They will not talk about that. That is the place you need to attack. That's the place you need to say, hey, let's talk about turnover amongst minorities in the company. If they talk about, if they're a financial company and they talk about how they are able to loan out money to people with very high credit scores, but they don't say the percentage of rejections. And if they don't break down the rejections into the population such that the people to who they are lending money don't look like the population they serve. If that is a subject that people do not talk about in your organization, it's time to talk about it. That's where the problem is. That's the challenge. So when you think that you have failed because something like that happened and you didn't do anything, no, you have succeeded because now you have identified it and you talk about it and you solve it. So yes, I guess for today we will continue dealing with these subjects next week as we went down our surveys both on LinkedIn and on Twitter. We'd like to see what people are saying and how we can be able to make sure that we bring people to learning from failure. Learning from failure and frustrations. That's our objective. We want to be able to ensure that a large percentage of people learn from failure and frustration. Because that affects behavior in the organization. It affects ethical behavior in the organization, and we need all our organization to be ethical. We need somebody to be free to report when they fail and not only when they succeed. Because success may be an event, but business is a process. So sometimes even the person who says they have succeeded this time will fail tomorrow. And if you make them know that when you fail, don't report to me, then you have a sinking ship. I think we will reach there for today. My name is Dr. David Frederick Amakobe. I'm an organizational behavior and structure consultant. I also do entrepreneurship and do recruitment for healthcare facilities in the US. We recruit nurses from Kenya and from Ghana. We have a representative office in Nairobi. We'll talk about it later in another video. So, if you have learned anything on this live stream, please like it, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Because we need to be able to discuss the impact individuals, groups, structures, and processes have on behavior within organizations. And there are some of those processes or some of the things that happen in the processes that really affect the behavior in the organization, but nobody wants to talk about it. So it's here we are going to talk about it. It's here we are going to learn to know that it's not how many hours somebody sits in the office reading a newspaper. It is how much value they create. If they can create value for you in an hour, let them go to the beach. don't think that now if they can create value in an hour, they should sit there and create it for 10 hours. They won't. Not when they are knowledge workers. If it's a physical thing, doing something physical, changing tires, okay, you have to count how many tires have been changed. That's okay, fine. But if it's knowledge, a knowledge individual who is more like normally state managers who manage knowledge employees is more like having an author or a poet come to write for you poems. And you tell them, I need the 20 poems per hour. It won't work. But they may sit for a month and write no poem, and then the last day they write 100. Okay? Because it's more like milking a cow or having hens that lay eggs. You can't force them to lay eggs. They lay eggs at the right time. And if you try to milk a cow when it's not ready, you won't get any milk. And if you kill it, you think you can get milk from the other, it won't. So you have to sit there and wait appropriate time. Same thing. Knowledge workers use their brain, just like a cow uses its udder to produce milk. And they use their brain to produce knowledge, produce and apply knowledge. And if you are frustrated that they cannot sit in the office for 8 hours per day, or if they sit there, they don't seem to be producing something, that falls back to, did you really know what you're going to do? Did you know who you're going to use to do it? Because telling people to come to sit in the office for 8 hours from 8 to 5, thinking that that time they will be able to tune on and produce something, I think that's not good. But that's what is creating most of the failures in organizations, because we are using a very old model to manage very modern workers. So I went off it there a little bit, but I was just saying we have to expect failure in organizations. We have to know how to deal with it, and we have to understand that over time we have been wired to either blame other